Will the Minister of the Environment get up and explain to us why slandering an NGO by innuendo is a figure of speech?
Mr. Speaker, as I think the member of the Liberal Party knows well, this government is committed to responsible resource development. We're also committed to responsible use of charitable monies to ensure that charitable monies go into charitable activities as opposed to political activities.
More questions today over the provocative statement that the Environment Minister Peter Kent made here, both on Power and Politics and on CBC Radio's The House. He accused Canadian environmental charities of laundering money from foreign sources. A lot of questions about for him to name names. That kind of language comes at a time when many environmental groups and the opposition are decrying the inclusion of a lot of these environmental changes in the big budget implementation bill. Add that to the news today that another organization called Tides Canada, which is an environmental group the Natural Resource Minister Joe Oliver described as a radical group, is being audited by Revenue Canada for the second time. All this has a lot of people asking, is the Conservative government declaring war on environmental groups, or is the government simply keeping overly vigilant environmental groups in check? Are they basically saying adhere to the law? Let's find out. Rick Smith, the Executive Director of Environmental Defence, and Jamie Ellerton of EthicalOil are both here. Gentlemen, good to have you.
Good to be here.
Rick Smith.
Thanks, Evan.
I mean, this is the context here, and I know EthicalOil has called for your group to be investigated, frankly, for violations of your charitable status. Do you feel environmental groups are under attack by the government?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, we are under attack because the powerful oil interests don't like what we have to say. There are tens of thousands of charities in this country, and it's only environmental charities that over the last few months have been labeled by federal cabinet ministers as radicals, as money launderers, as terrorists, as adversaries of the state. That kind of invective has not been aimed at any other charities other than environmental charities.
What do you make of Tides Canada getting a second audit just a few years after their first audit? Politically motivated, or do they require this kind of vigilance?
Well, you know, Tides itself today said it has no idea whether this is politically motivated or not. It did note that that the Canada Revenue Agency's questions are rather pointed and mirror some of what you see in the federal government's rhetoric over the last few months. So I certainly think that what's been happening over the last few months in terms of environmental charities specifically and crassly smeared by the federal government, by the oil industry, by the oil industry's friends like Jamie beside me, is just an unprecedented attack on the ability of Canadians to participate in the democratic process.
So on the Jamie Ellerton, on the homepage of EthicalOil website, there's basically a big green rectangle that says Canada Revenue Agency, time to investigate. And when you click on it, it encourages people to basically fill out a form that then goes to the National Revenue Minister, Gail Shea, to report any radical or environmental lobby group masquerading as a charity. And you've targeted Environmental Defence, Rick Smith's group. Do you feel the government's targeting environmental groups fairly? And if so, what's the evidence?
No, I think what you see here, Evan, is the government has taken note, like EthicalOil has, of the increased political and partisan activity of registered charities in violation of the law. So we've wrote letters to the Canada Revenue Agency calling for Environmental Defence and the David Suzuki Foundation to be investigated. Environmental Defence, I will have you note, it not only does a ton of political activity, also engaged in a partisan campaign singling out Peter Kent in Thornhill, making 50,000 phone calls, campaigning door to door, and running ads. This is all on Environmental's website back in February of 2011. And we think they're in violation of the law. They are slandering the oil industry. They're not working constructively to help deal with some of the environmental challenges that the oil sands faces. To the contrary, they're just saying stop it at all costs. And we think we're encouraged by the measures announced in the budget that the government is going to put $8 million at the Canada Revenue Agency to beef up their compliance efforts to ensure registered charities are in violation of the law.
What about this money laundering bit? Here's what Peter Kent said to us, and I want to get your response to this.
What our government is doing through the Finance Committee is investigating allegations that offshore funds have improperly been funneled through, laundered, if you will, that's a fairly accurate word, through Canadian organizations that have charitable status. Their objectives are to obstruct and to delay the reasonable process of environmental assessments.
What about this, Mr. Ellerton? Laundering money. Do you know of that? Is there any investigations? Do you support that idea?
I will let the minister speak for himself, but I do know, as announced today in the Globe and Mail, that the Tides Foundation is presently being audited for their political and partisan activity. What you have is the Tides Canada essentially acts as a clearinghouse for billions of dollars of donations and millions being funneled into Canadian organizations to engage in political activity. Evan, I actually printed off on the website today. Here you have the Tyee and Tides Canada. You can donate to the Tyee, use Tides Canada's charitable number. You can donate to Forest Ethics, also not a registered charity. You could use Tides Canada's number. PETA, the organization that we all know throws red paint on people wearing fur coats and protests, and they're more than welcome to do so. Not a charity. They, too, rent out Tides Canada's charitable number for their political causes. We think this is in violation of the law. If you look at the 2010 tax return of Tides Canada, they claim that they were not giving out their charitable number for other groups. And quite frankly, Evan, the evidence stacks up against them time and time and time again. So I'm encouraged that the Canada Revenue Agency has audited them for 2008 and 2009. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, and they should expand it to 2010 and take a full look.
Rick Smith.
Yeah, Evan, I don't know on what basis Jamie gets on his high horse with his oil industry funded organization when he won't disclose publicly, including on this show, who gives him money. I don't know on what basis he gets on his high horse and starts to impugn the integrity of charities of long standing like Tides and like Environmental Defense. We've been around for almost 30 years. And because of our activities, there's more green space protected across this country. Children's toys have less damaging chemicals in them. We worked very productively with the federal government to get toxic chemicals out of things like baby bottles. So our record is clear. What we've contributed to Canadian society as a charity of long standing is clear. What the Tides Foundation has contributed is clear. And Jamie's continued lies and innuendo mirror what we just saw.
Evan, that is absurd. These are not lies. You can go to their website and print out the information for yourself.
From the federal environment
Minister, let me tell you something.
Which is frankly shocking.
Later in this program, we'll talk to Ross McMillan of the Tides Foundation. Okay, he was at the center, mentioned in question period today, and as you just talked about, Mr. Ellerton, let me show you what he said. I asked him, because of what Ethical Oil does, to respond to some of those allegations. Here's what Ross McMillan just told me a number of minutes ago.
Well, let's name Ethical Oil for what it is. It's an industry front group established by industry and conservative operatives here in the government. It's a phony grassroots organization that very much is repeating the industry-led campaigns in the United States and importing those types of negative campaigns to silence dissent here in Canada. Unlike Tides Canada, which reports on its donors on an annual basis, Ethical Oil is not disclosing any information, and certainly on your show would not address your very explicit and direct questions relating to whether or not Enbridge or other companies were funding their operations.
Mr. Ellerton, I'll give you a chance to respond to them. They're saying they disclose everything. They're happy to disclose any of their donors, and they say they comply. What's your response to that?
Here's the difference. Ethical Oil is a registered not-for-profit organization in full compliance with the law. These organizations are registered charities. They are getting taxpayers' benefit to subsidize their political campaigns. When you have an organization that in their 2010 tax return claims that they are not lending out their charitable number for other groups who otherwise wouldn't get charitable status, they are actually lying. The information on their website, PETA, Forest Ethics, the Tyee, Evan, you can go and read them all there.
Well, Mr. Ellerton, they're saying they disclose their donors and they're complying with the law. They've been audited now twice. He's saying you don't disclose your donors. You say who you'll take money from, but you have no transparent disclosure of your donors.
Evan, if they were in full compliance with the law, the CRA wouldn't be auditing them again because of how much they are violating the spirit of the law.
That's actually completely false.
There are founded reasons why the Canada Revenue Agency...
The Canada Revenue Agency audits
Jamie Ellerton finish, and then Rick Smith. Mr. Ellerton, you're saying they're being investigated because of their violations? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, there's obviously the professional public servants of the Canada Revenue Agency obviously have documented enough information to show whether they're in violations of the law, and when there's smoke, there could be fire. So it is my understanding that the professional public servants, not the democratically elected political government led by the Conservative Party and Stephen Harper, but the professional public servants are presently undertaking an audit to make sure that Tides Canada is in full compliance with the law, given the countless stacking evidence showing where they're in violation of the law.
Rick Smith.
Yeah, Evan, I mean, the Canada Revenue Agency audits charities across this country on an annual basis all the time. So Jamie's allegation that the very act of auditing means something's gone wrong is completely false and frankly, just more of his lies. So let's take a step backward here for a second. The idea that charities conduct some advocacy activity is expected by Canadians and actually welcomed in our society. I mean, the Canadian Cancer Society, for instance, has great research and education programs, but also takes a stand on municipal smoking bylaws. The Heart and Stroke Foundation does great research and education and also takes a stand when it comes to the salt content in food, and Canadian society benefits from that. My charity has contributed green space across this country and healthier Canadians, and so I don't hear Jamie's organization or the federal government or the oil industry complaining about those other charities. It is only environmental charities that they have a beef with, which makes my point. This is not about, regardless of what Jamie has to say about he's just interested in transparent advocacy, this has nothing to do with advocacy per se. This has everything to do with the federal government and the oil industry and their friends not liking what we have to say.
All right, I've got about 30 seconds here. Mr. Ellerton, I mean, this question's come up before, and I'm going to continue to ask it because a lot of this is about transparency, whether it's one group getting audited, disclosing where their funds are coming from, and these groups do it. Will EthicalOil, you've been on the front lines of this on your website, will you disclose who donates to EthicalOil so then, you know, the playing field is level?
Evan, our EthicalOil is quite clear. We accept donations from any Canadian individual and Canadian business. We are in full compliance as a registered not-for-profit with the law.
But
and when we face lawsuits from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, who hires a 2,400-person law firm to try and sue us and silence us, we are not going to expose any donors to that kind of lawsuits by putting their name on a website.
You're bankrolled by the oil industry, so I'm sure you're good for it.
Hundreds of people who support our organization.
But that's okay. But they're not going to be exposed to. But why not then just disclose your donors if you're asking other agencies to disclose their donors? That's to me kind of a fundamental question. Isn't what's good for the goose good for the gander?
No, see, Evan, because here's the difference. We are a registered not-for-profit in full compliance with the law. Here you have charitable organizations. I'm sure Environmental Defects and Rick Smith's organization has done tremendous work. But you know what? They've also violated the law by engaging in partisan activity, by singling out Peter Kent and campaigning against him in the lead up to the last campaign. I'm sorry, making 50,000 phone calls, campaigning door-to-door, and running ads against one member of Parliament, that is partisan activity, and that is why we called for the CRA to intervene.
All right, we're going to keep this debate up. This debate continues not only in the House of Parliament, but across the country, and certainly as we're finding out more details about the budget implementation bill and, of course, the money that Canada Revenue Agency is spending on in terms of these investigations. This is a good conversation to continue. Rick Smith, Jamie Ellerton, always good to have both of you back on the program.
Thanks for your time, Evan.
Bye-bye.
The environmental advocacy group that is embroiled in an escalating war of words with the federal government is the subject of a second audit by the Canadian Revenue Agency. Yeah, that's right. The second time Tides Canada has been audited in just 3 years. Is it just routine financial scrutiny for a charitable group? Is it politically motivated move to intimidate a vocal critic? Remember, Tides Canada was named by Minister Joe Oliver as one of the radical groups. Ross McMillan is the president of Tides Canada. He joins me from Vancouver. Ross McMillan, thanks for being here.
It's great to be here, Evan. Thanks for the opportunity to talk with you.
This is your second audit in the last 3 years. Some have said this is a politically motivated audit that your group, Tides Canada, targeted by the Resource Minister, Natural Resource Minister Joe Oliver. This is a targeted attack, a political attack on your organization. Do you believe that?
I probably will never know where the audit came from. That sort of information is generally not disclosed. But I can say that the line of questioning in the audit does fit to some extent within the broader critique of our organization and environmental philanthropy more broadly, looking at the interests of international foundations on environmental issues here in Canada, international funding for various projects in the country, and the work of various environmental and social justice causes that we support, with views that are not always completely aligned with the government's perspective.
And so what does that mean? So, I mean, we've heard now the Environment Minister, Peter Kent, say they're looking at groups that are money laundering. We've heard Minister Oliver say they're radical groups and foreign funded. Again, the Prime Minister talked about foreign funded groups. What do you make of those comments as it relates either to your group or to other groups that perhaps even Tides Canada funds?
Well, I can't believe for a moment that the government and the ministers are referencing Tides Canada specifically when they assert allegations relating to money laundering. We're fully compliant with the Income Tax Act, all CRA guidelines regarding both domestic and international funding. We already report on an annual basis all significant contributions to the government from private sources, foreign sources. And we are fully compliant with all of the guidelines relating to political activity, allowable political activity under the Charities framework. So I can't believe that the ministers are actually referencing our group. With regard to the groups that we support, that also perplexes me in that we can only grant to registered Canadian charities. And so if the government does have an issue with those charities, they should be talking with those charities and naming those charities as opposed to asserting veiled critiques of organizations. Certainly I've seen no evidence whatsoever of any untoward activity relating to foreign funding or political activity in the charitable sector.
Have you ever seen anything like this, the government talking about environmental groups and nonprofits in this way? Again, I go back to these statements, the money laundering, the funded by foreigners in an unethical way or in a way that impedes Canadian business. Have you ever seen this before?
Certainly not in my career, and indeed I think back to 2007 when I stood on a stage here in Vancouver announcing, along with the then new Environment Minister, John Baird, the conservation financing package for the Great Bear Rainforest deal on the British Columbia coast, to which philanthropy brought $60 million to the table to partner with the Campbell government here in BC and the Harper government. And indeed, at that event, Minister Baird indicated that he was swift to move to solidify the deal and the partnership with international and Canadian philanthropy, specifically because he did not want to see those funds diverted to other global priorities. And we've gone a long way since 2007, given that the government now is vilifying the same Canadian and international philanthropies that they were partnering with just a few years ago.
Last question. Is there any danger that with this audit or with any of these investigations that we're hearing about, we have no details, that Tides Canada could lose its charitable status?
I suppose there's always a danger of that, although, you know, as I've said earlier, we're really, we take our responsibilities seriously to manage the organization consistent with Revenue Canada guidelines. So I don't see any significant threat there. I will say that the audit is time-consuming and has been very expensive for us to endure, but I don't see any immediate threat there. I think the bigger threat is for the potential chill on the overall environmental or civic sector in the country with new sanctions relating to monitoring and reporting on political activity and foreign funding. And I think it's going to cast a pall, if you will, over civic dissent, and it's essentially silencing the critics of government.
I'll leave it there. Ross McMillan, thanks so much for being on Power and Politics.